My name is Jefferson Schallenberger, and about 7 years ago I started Sugar Percussion. Sugar Percussion makes drums. We make solid stave-built drums. How I got into woodworking, I was going to take my contemporary U.S. history degree from college and go become a school teacher, and had a free summer before grad school started, and an uncle suggested I go take a woodworking class. I ended up going back to that same school of that summer class for a more formal year-long term, and I had my drums up there, an old Fibes kit that was given to me when I was 12, and I started lessons and it was barely hanging on with duct tape, and when it finally surrendered, I was up there in a wood shop and decided I wanted to learn how to make shells. So I cannibalized all the hardware off that kit to make what I thought were brilliant shells. I wouldn't jack my car up with them now. They were terrible. But it was about 3 or 4 years later, and that was when I revisited it and made what I would actually still show someone now, that kit. And that was my first real kit. I couldn't go full time at that point. I was scraping with the furniture making career. So I needed to tend to that, and it was just pockets of time that I would fill. It wasn't until I was in Santa Cruz, I had a shop, I had enough furniture work that I could take a week here or a week there, that I really started to explore it. I had been collecting pieces of wood over the years, and I grabbed every extra piece I had and cut it up and made 75 snare drums, most of which became firewood because I was learning. But a couple of them stood out, and I started to take those to a friend who was gigging on a weekly basis, and he would play it, I would hear it, and then we'd talk about it, and he'd give me his thoughts, and I'd go back to the shop and make another one for the next week. That went on for a couple months, and that was the most fruitful education for me. The amount of stuff that bothers me is what I had to offer. I found a lot of great outsides of drums, and a lot of those drums look like crap on the inside. That stuff matters to me. For it to matter that much, that renders a certain cost drum. And not everybody can afford a $1,000 snare drum. You know, if we do a batch of 15 snare drums at a time, we can get them down to 6 or 7 hours cumulative time per drum. If we do one at a time, it'd take about 10 hours. Everyone starts with a conversation with the customer, but if I'm kind of to distill it to a basic, I need the lumber. You know, every snare drum is made from one stick of wood. Every kit is made from one tree. From 6 foot by 12 inches wide up to 20 feet by 8 inches wide by 2 inches thick by 1 inch thick, it all depends. I can make a good sounding drum out of some pretty shitty wood, but it's gonna look bad. There shouldn't be a competition between performance and aesthetics. Would I say that the wood selection is important? I would say it's critical. I have a set of skills that can manipulate the wood, but who cares if the wood sucks? You know, we're avoiding knots or checks or cracks or splits or stuff. That's going to take care of the performance side. Once that's taken care of, then we just get to indulge the luxurious side, which is, what does it look like? Do I want it to look like no one can tell that it's made of 32 pieces? Most of the time, because that's fun for me. So now we got to take whatever form that's in and get it down into pieces. There are 32 pieces in every one of the drums, and they're at a certain size with a certain angle, at a certain thickness, and a certain length. So I need to go from this or something much bigger into 32 of these. We have a series of tools that I can chop that lumber down. Where I went to school, we were taught to use our hands, but there are things that your hands can't do as efficiently or safely or repeatedly, as well as the machines. So the machines are set up to do most of the heavy lifting. The last bit of all of it is done by hand, because there are things that those machines can't do that hands, if taught well, can do. Here are 32 of a miniaturized version. I'm making a circle out of 32 pieces. I don't want you to see that there are 32 pieces. I want you to wonder or be baffled that there are pieces in there. That's great. I've milled all the pieces, I've laid them out, and then I've taped them up and they're ready to glue up. I put glue in between every piece, and then I roll it up, and then put it in what's essentially a couple tourniquets and squeeze the crap out of it. And then I put it away for a number of hours until that glue goes off. So I use Elmer's white glue, the same stuff we all ate in kindergarten. There are glues that are stronger, but they're surplus to requirements. That's only if the woodworking is good. The two mating surfaces have to be perfect for the glue that I'm using to work perfectly. So now we have a faceted circle. We need to make a round circle. And we have a circle that's over thickness, faceted, and over length. We've given ourselves some wiggle room to then go mill out the circle within the faceted circle. And so what we have is a full circle of this. You see the staves, it's still faceted, and we need to end up like this. We're too long because we need extra length to mount it to the lathe, the first lathe, to take a faceted circle into a smoother circle. While we still have that extra length, we run it onto another lathe and we take a circle that's rough into a circle that's smooth. At that point, we can cut it off and now treat the edges and start doing the more refined parts. So it's too long up to here, here, and then at this point we cut it off, and now we have, if we're making a 14x6, we're now at 14x6 and a little change. We still have to sand the edges, so that's gonna take that change away, and we end up at 6-inch step. All the extra stuff, all the particulars, that's all done by hand. You know, it takes 10 minutes from here to here, 10 minutes from here to here, and about 4 hours sometimes from here to here, all the way to finish. And then we take it to the bench and do the final sanding, we do the drilling, we address the edges, we do the bearing edges, we do the snare beds, and then a final sand before we start putting coats of finish on it. So the last set is setup. It's hardware and setup. We take our lugs and the throw-offs that people at Trick make for us, and snare wires, head choice, hoop choice. That then goes back to the first conversation with the customer, like how they want it set up. There isn't some inflated ego of, well, I possess the skills to make beautiful things, so for the world, I must make those beautiful things. It's not like that. It's, I don't want to put bad stuff out there. And as much as I hated when my dad said, if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it right. Oh, I hated that. And now I'm here saying the same thing. So hopefully he's not watching.